مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made zakat obligatory on a believer, a Muslim who's an adult and also sane. These are the three conditions for having to pay zakat. And obviously then if you have assets that reach a certain threshold, and those assets being your wealth in terms of cash, in your stock in a business, gold and silver. And threshold for gold and silver is different. But if you have all these four commodities, then assets, then you accumulate them and you give zakah according to the silver threshold, nisab, which these days the price of the silver is between £300 to £400. And if you have anything above that, then and it's been with you for a whole year, then you have to pay zakah. And when you say whole year, it's Islamic calendar year. So you fix a date, you start from a certain date. Let's say you pick the 20th of Ramadan, and then Islamic year has to pass. And if it reaches the next year, 20th Ramadan, and you still have assets that are above the threshold of nisab for silver, being anything between £300 to £400, whatever the price of the silver is at the time, then you have to pay, it's a 52 tola silver on that, or 612 grams of silver. And whatever the value of that is. What if you've missed zakat and you've not paid have not fulfilled your obligation for the past 10 years, let's say, or 3 years or 4 years, and you didn't know about it? Can you make up the zakat? Yes, so anything this like qaza, anything that you missed and you realized, then you should try to discharge the obligation, because the obligation stays with you. So then you try to work out as much as possible in terms of each Islamic year that you have missed, how many assets that you had, what was the value of those assets, and then you calculate zakat and pay on those missed years, and we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts the zakat. Now potentially, obviously, try to be on the cautious side and try to give as much as you can. When calculating the zakat for the previous years, it may not be possible to accurately do so, but Allah ta'ala knows your intention, and Allah ta'ala will reward you for your intention of trying to discharge the obligation. The other question it could be that, can you pay zakat in advance? And the answer is yes, you can pay zakat in advance. So for instance, your annual fixed date that you have fixed for yourself is the 20th of Ramadan every year. But somebody comes to you who's in need, and he comes to you in the month of Rabiul Awwal, which is many months in advance, or let's say they come to you in the month of Sha'ban, just the month before Ramadan. Can you pay your zakat? Yes, you can. So if you know that you are going to have many assets, and your zakat is going to be, which is 2.5% on annual saving, your zakat is going to be, let's say, £1,000 or £3,000, and you want to pay £500 of zakat in advance, then you can do so, and you have to have that intention that this is zakat money I'm giving. And that's absolutely fine. What you cannot do is that you give them the £500 and then in Ramadan, you calculate your zakah and you realize that you have to pay £1,000, and you think, well, £500 I paid a month ago, I'll just add that to my calculation. That is not possible. So you have to pay. You have to have the right intention that this is going to be your zakat. Then you can pay in advance. Obviously, one of the key things to remember is that when you're calculating your assets, you can also deduct your liabilities, your debts. And by that, we don't mean the debts like, for instance, some people have debt on their house, mortgage, or some people might have long-term debts, and they only pay monthly installments. Those are not the debts that we're talking about. We're talking about those debts that immediately are payable, and you're doing your best to pay those debts as soon as possible. It really depends that whether or not money belongs to you. So you might have borrowed some money to someone, and you know that that is your money and they'll give it back to you. Then you calculate that money when you're calculating your assets and the value of those assets for your zakat. So for instance, you've given someone, let's say, £1,000, and the assets that you have they come up to £5,000. Then you add that £1,000 as your money, and then you calculate zakat on the overall £6,000. Another thing is that zakat is only payable on your income. So, for instance, if you have rental properties, zakat is not payable on the actual house. Is payable on the rent that comes from that house. But if you have bought a house with the intention of selling, you're in the business of buying and selling houses, then that will be considered as a commodity, and zakat will be payable on the value of the house. But otherwise, if you just bought a house for rental purposes or for your own personal use, but you're actually renting it to others, then zakat is not payable on the value of the house. It's only payable on the income that comes from that house. You should consult your local organization, Islamic organization, or local imam to ask any particular questions that you have on zakat.